Okay, so it's supposed to be streaming. Oh my God.
It says live on my end.
Yep, should be live.
Okay.
Why can't I? I've been at it for like 15 minutes because there is
Oh,
this custom
really?
integration, that I'm supposed to do.
Oh.
It won't let me do it. Well, let me check if it's live on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's live on LinkedIn. I can see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm supposed to hit a button on Instagram too, because it's like a custom integration, not a direct one compared to LinkedIn and YouTube. Oh, well,
You can just we'll have the recording for it anyway.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess we can just start rolling.
All right. Do we want to stop this and start it again or no?
I'll just cut it up afterwards because I'm not sure what's going to happen if I stop it and start it again.
Okay. Got it.
Moment, I'm just going to close this. All right. So welcome everyone. It's our first live streaming through Riverside. So we had to go through had to jump through a couple of hoops to get here. So if you have already tuned in, please excuse our little chit chat. So today we are diving into the stage of startup growth that nobody prepares founders for. It's actually the moment after product market fit, when the company finally grows and also cracks at the same time. And this live isn't going to be some sort of motivational talk. This is going to be literally a forensic breakdown of why teams implode when the success hits. I have my guest here today, Olga, and I'm just going to let her introduce herself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to talk about this because I think a lot of people talk about the wins and what it makes to succeed, but not about the things that make people crash and burn, make companies crash and burn. So I'm really excited for this chat. And I'm Olga. I'm a system strategist. I'm the founder and CEO of Next Day Executive. And I work with companies to bring them from a state of chaos in their backend and systems to streamlined, where everyone knows what they're doing, where everything is organized and ready to go to allow you to scale. So a lot of the things we'll talk about will be experiences from what I've seen from companies going in and seeing the mess in the background. When in front it looks great, but we will dissect back and see, okay, what is the mistakes that companies make.
Awesome. And a quick reminder, if you haven't seen my content yet, I work with scaling startups right before, right after Series A. So we're talking about 30-ish to 50-ish headcount, full-time headcount, probably making over $1 million euros or dollars in revenue. And so what I do is I just work with scaling your revenue through applying basically system-led scaling. It's a phrase that I have just decided to use, but people told me that it makes sense. So here we are, and we have a very specific agenda. So even though it's a live, we're actually going to stick to what we have announced, and there are 5 very specific points that we're going to go through. Basically, the first one and foremost is the science. Or the warning signs that would tell you that things are about to crack, why that happens, how to prevent it, and when is best to act. So let's jump right in. Olga, when you walk into a company that's been growing fast but really struggling, what's the first execution leak that you see? Like, what is the thing that tells you that the system is already sleeping?
There's a few things that it's a big red flag when I go into companies, but the very first one, probably one that more people should pay attention to, is the financial side. Is no financial management. When And maybe it's because these companies are so new, but when these companies get a bunch of money, like they'll get it, at 10 million and around, they think that, oh, that's going to last forever. And very, very quickly, that money is
Right.
spent on things that shouldn't be spent on. And the reason it happens a lot of times is because there's no financial tracking in place. There's no place where they can make those decisions and ask themselves, is this a smart spend, or are we just spending because we just got $10 million and we have all this money to do? So that's one of the biggest things, and probably the one that brings companies to the graveyard quicker, because when you run out of money, you can't go forward, essentially.
Exactly. Game over.
Game over. Yeah. No level. No next level.
So I've been mostly in house up until now in 5 different startups, and for me, like, I knew that things were not working out because the work has actually been done in like 5 different places. So there were way too many decisions being taken in Slack. Then we needed like 5 internal meetings to finally make a decision. Then everybody would be operating from different dashboards. Nobody knew what the source of truth was anymore. And like, it seemed like a deja vu several times a week. Would be like, what, haven't we already talked about this? Yeah, but we still need them. Like, let's just go. And it was this whole, between let's just go, like fire drill, to actually kind of like being completely frozen and not able to decide. And now that I'm actually an external consultant, it's like when I come in and I see that their calendar looks like just block of internal meetings, and then when they ask me to join their Slack, and I just see the ping pong of messages, I'm like, okay, here we go again.
More people spend time in Slack than actually doing their work. And I
Yep.
see it happen so many times. It's like they're busy, but then when I ask them, okay, what's the top 3 things you've achieved today? They're like, good question. We've just been busy. But it's like, well, doing what? Talking and trying to go and make decisions. Like, it is what you mentioned is so right. When there's too many, and that brings me to the point, when there's too many heads in the kitchen or cooks in the kitchen, and you don't know who to listen to, right? The CFO is saying one thing, the CEO is saying something else, the CTO is saying something completely different. And then the people underneath, they're like, who do we listen to? They're all saying different things. And that's where that decision loop and that miscommunication happens, because no one knows what's going on to begin with.
Absolutely. And I think it also kind of reflects in the way, like in the amount of software that they have. Like, I've seen the 2 extremes. Like, they either barely have anything and they're still operating like Excel and Google Docs, to the opposite, where they're paying for like 15 different subscriptions, but they still do not know what's going on because they're like half used, half-assed, and then there is a lot of conflicting data, actually.
100%. That's a big thing. When I do go into companies, I do an audit, and the first thing I do an audit for is what software are you using, what systems are you currently using. And you're so right that companies are either on the like, oh, I'm barely using anything, and I'm just putting everything into one spreadsheet. And then there's companies that are using 25 different tools and choosing each tool for a specific small thing. And instead of just consolidating it into and that's why I say, I'm like, why don't we consolidate this into 3 or 4 really good tools that can have a lot of these features, and get rid of the 15 ones? Because you're right, when a CTO is going to update one platform, but the CEO does something completely different, obviously there's going to be a miscommunication, because they're working from 2 different places, essentially. So that's a huge thing. It's so easy for project to slip that way, because there's no one central Wikipedia. I like to call it Wikipedia, like a company Wikipedia, basically.
I think that also most of the time creates a lack of transparency between the teams because they would be using all different systems and platforms, which I think is okay in a way because sure, like a product or engineering team would use Linear, and then say marketing and sales team would use like Asana or something else that makes more sense for them. But when those things get gated, like when the other team
Yes.
doesn't have access to those platforms, this is where usually things go really wrong because there is lack of trust, lack of communication, and this like hogging is like, no, 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 like don't look at our stuff. And I'll show it to you for like 10 minutes on screen share, but you still have no idea what's going on really.
Yeah, and it is that gatekeep. I think it's a lack of trust that you think, like, I think so, a lot of teams in this, especially in this startup phase of scaling, they don't trust each other. And maybe it's because they're so new that they're like barely able to keep it together in their own team that they don't want to
Right.
maybe show their weaknesses to the other team. But essentially, these all these teams need to remember you're all on the same team. You're all the goal is to make the company successful. So there's no point gatekeeping. But I see that quite a bit. The bigger the team, the bigger almost the secret like the secrets
Right.
are there, you
Right.
know?
It gets like super political and it's like, relax, guys. You're not working for like Fortune 100 company. It's not like one
Yeah.
of you is going to miss out on some huge bonus.
Exactly. No, and that's when things are kept. No wonder one person in the C-suite is thinking something else, and then another person is thinking something else because they're operating as if they're two different companies. But you're not. You're just two different departments.
Exactly, exactly. And I think in my experience, it just really comes down to like basic human psychology. It's like one of the like principles of what is it like? I guess positive psychologists assume positive intent or assume good intent. But I feel like people are just in general so I don't know, like scarred from startup experiences that they just automatically assume that the other person is like out there to get them or they're like eventually going to point fingers that they just stop sharing.
And I don't blame them because I've been in startups where I don't feel like I could share because if I share, my idea would be gone. This is where company culture comes in. But like a good company culture isn't just accidental. Like
Right.
it's designed. Like a good company culture is designed, and then like I hate to say it, but it comes from the very top. If you're not going to trust your team's not going to trust you or each other. So, if founders, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, my company culture can definitely improve, you have to start with yourself. And what are you, how, like, are you leading by example? Or are you one of those people that wants to hide and not be open with your team? Because your team's going to see that as that's the way we're supposed to go.
Again, I think it's like for me it like comes down to my parenting experience too because this is where you see just like such basic human nature. It's like I have two kids, 3 and 5, and my daughter is 5 and my son is 3, and I can spend hours and hours and hours telling my daughter, oh, you just need to be kind to your brother, like if he says something that upsets you, you shouldn't be taking things away from him. So I can say it 100 million times, but if I don't do it myself, like if I snap at my son, do you think she's going to do? She's going to do exactly what I do,
Exactly.
despite of what I say.
Exactly. You have to what you say. Like we always say, it's like your words don't matter. It's your actions, and that honestly couldn't be truer to people that are in leadership. If you're a leader in the company, if you don't set a good example, don't be surprised if the people under you are not doing good work because you're not doing good work and they're leading. Like that's why you're in the leadership position. And that brings me to the other point. It's like another reason leak that I see is people being put in the wrong positions,
Oh, yeah.
non-leaders being
Yeah.
put into leadership positions, and they don't know how to
Right.
lead. So that obviously is going to trickle down to the whole of
Yep.
like the rest of the team.
Oh, I think it's a very important one. And because I've been part of like smaller teams that were supposed to grow, at that point, I was like, I have always had manager position already because like
Yeah.
I only started working in startups halfway through my career overall. And then we would have all this like great executionists, maybe like a really good designer. And then instead of hiring head of design, the founder would be like, oh, we should just promote Tom because he's like so good at design and like we need to grow our people. And I'm like, Yeah, but also I feel like we're going to set him up for failure because yeah, we are going to promote him to head of design and hire another designer, but he has zero management skills. So how do you think that's going to go? And I've definitely seen that go wrong a lot of times. Like when
Yeah.
you're just promoting somebody, maybe with actually good intentions, but then it just really backfires.
It backfires because I think they think from like oh, this is just easier, but they don't think from like a practical like lens is, and it is hard when you're involved in the company. It's very hard not to reward the people that are already working for you. But from like when you have to take a step back as a CEO and the founder and be like, is that a good business decision, or am I just doing that because it feels good?
Right, exactly.
Hiring Tom or promoting Tom feels good, but if he has no leadership experience, that's a really shitty business decision.
Yep. And it's also going to be shitty for Tom because he's going to feel like a failure and he'll probably eventually quit because that's just going to
Yeah,
be too much pressure for him because he's probably not going to have any resources made available to him, no support. There's going to be a lot of expectations. And then how the fuck is he going to deliver?
100%. And I've seen it happen too. Like brilliant, brilliant people at what they do, given more responsibility because of that loyalty aspect, but then crumble because they're good at what they do in that area, but they're not good at, like, you can be an unbelievable designer, but if you can't lead people, you should not be in a leadership position. And that's otherwise, yeah, they're going to crumble. And as you said, they're going to leave. And now you've just lost a really good designer.
Exactly, exactly. But let's also like look. So we're coming actually to the second point of like using headcount as patchwork. Basically, like you said, raising money also like okay, like let's hire 10 more people. I mean, it's a classic. How would you describe your experience with this and how it should not be approached?
I have a rule that I go by, and my rule is hire slowly and fire fast. And for
And they
some
usually do the
reason,
opposite, right?
that's literally what I was going to say. For some reason, companies do the complete opposite. They're like, let's hire, let's hire. It doesn't matter if he doesn't have the experience. Let's hire because we need someone in. But then they concede that a person isn't doing the job, giving them so many excuses and taking forever to fire. But it's like essentially, if you want like a successful business that everyone loves working for, you like one bad hire is actually detrimental to the company, is
Yep.
detrimental, because you'll have one person that will ruin it for everyone. Like it's so that's why I'm like, if someone is, I'm not saying fire someone from their first mistake, but if you see that you've talked to them and they're still, it's time for the chop. I hate to say it, I don't like firing people, but when you look at a company perspective, you got to make that decision for what's best of the business. But don't hire fast, because you're going to hire the wrong people, and a bad
Yep.
hire is really bad for the business.
And I usually, so I've like preached to the founder who, like I guess HR or recruitment people in house to just use a freaking recruiter, like qualified recruiter. Yeah, sure, you'll spend like 20-25% more on top of salary. Chances are you're actually gonna end up with the qualified person versus hiring for the position that you have like no knowledge in. Like say founders hiring their first GTM or sales
Yeah.
hire, and they're like say they're technical founders. They have no idea what those people are supposed to look like, talk, and
Yeah.
etc. And then they most of the time they just end up with the wrong person because people know how to sell themselves, really.
Ugh. And I recruiter actually in this space, like he will find the best person for a company. But from seeing it, and even from his perspective, it's like the recruiters are going to literally get you the best person, where if you have even an in-house recruiter, they're getting paid anyway, regardless if they hire the
Exactly.
best person or
Exactly.
not. They're
Mhm.
going to get hired anyway. So I'm a big fan of outsourcing recruiting, for that
Same.
reason, because I think it's really good for the company. And you're right. If like a CTO is like, okay, you have to hire the next developer, the CTO, like, first of all, they're not a recruiter. They don't know what questions to ask. They will just see, oh, can you code? show me your coding skills. But in the general aspect, it's like, are they good for the culture? Do they have the same values? A CTO is not going to give a shit about that.
Right. And I think there is also, like, once again, like the opposite side of the spectrum, where I've seen this happen a couple of times by now in house, which eventually was like detrimental for my role. Like resistance to hiring another senior business role usually would be like a counterpart for me, because I've always been a growth person. Depending on who you ask, there would be different definitions of what I was actually doing. But I'm not a sales professional. So I would always like champion for bringing a salesperson in. And then the last startup where I worked, there was this huge resistance from the founder to bring a salesperson on board. Why? Because he got really scarred by the first hire that he had. That he also, like, it took him a year to actually fire that person. He was like old school salesman, like, mostly thinking about going to conferences and really kicking it with his, old buddies, etc. So that, I know, like, spoiled the wheel for him, and he never afterwards agreed to hire that person, which eventually led to collapse of my role, because all of this fell on me without any formal acknowledgement. And then, like, talking with my peers in GTM, I've heard, sorry, GTM is a go-to-market for anybody who doesn't know. I need to stop using acronyms. They're like, yeah, that is literally what happens, like, 1 out of 3 times, this resistance to hiring another senior business role.
Which I don't blame them, because if they had a really bad experience before, you're going to carry that on. And I was the same with like my first few hires for my own company. I didn't have the best experience, and it was because I was like still learning like what to look for. And then I got to a stage where, like, I don't want to hire anyone. Obviously that's not the answer, but
Right.
it happens, because if we went through an experience that we don't want to do it again. But this is why it's like, when you hire the right person, and obviously recruiters, like actual people that do this for a living, they will find you the best person, and you kind of avoid that chance of someone being a nightmare. And
Exactly.
then, so it will help. I know it's a cost up front. I know it's like 20-25% of the salary, but the money you gain from having a really good employee is worth way more than that.
Absolutely. And also mental health.
Exactly. Yeah, your mental health and dealing with a really bad hire is not worth the money you're going to save on hiring like a professional recruiter to do that job. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think this brings us to really like the third sign of the fact that your org is probably about to crack. It's super connected with what we just discussed. So founder being the bottleneck, because I think there is like the flip side of, oh, I don't want to hire a salesperson, because the founder believes they can kind of do it themselves, while in reality it just falls on other people, but oh well. So founder being the bottleneck, I think you have a lot to say on that subject.
I do. And it all comes back to the reason that founders are a bottleneck is because they don't have the systems in place to relieve them from being that bottleneck. Because
Right.
as the founder, you know everything. You know everything from marketing to sales to the legal side to product. But if the systems aren't there that actually takes everything from your brain and has like, you have processes written out, or if you don't have a team management software or system, of course it's always going to rely on you. And I know founders have a hard time letting go, because they're like, I'm the best at it and no one's going to care as much as I do, which is fair, very fair, valid point. But this is where, if you put the systems that everyone needs to follow exactly how you want things done, there is no, like, you don't have to worry about things not being done correctly. If you have the systems, the processes, the right people in place that will actually follow them and not just say, oh yeah, there's processes, but I'm not going to follow them, you can essentially take a step back from that. So it's huge. Founder bottleneck is one of probably the biggest thing that keeps people back.
Yeah, I could only agree with that, because I've definitely again, I've seen the two different sides of the spectrum, where the same person, depending on the cycle or the stage that the company is in, would want to like review every single small decision, or then they'll be like, actually just like run with it. I'll be like, okay. And then this whole, ping pong, or really like the yo-yo effect of like, yeah, I want to look at everything versus no, you know what, just do it yourself. I think it also erodes trust at the end of the day. It's like, so
Absolutely.
like, can I do it? Can I not do it? Are you going to punish me for it afterwards? And it just creates this feeling of like walking on eggshells most of the time.
100%, because there's no one way of doing it. You're the founder at that stage. It's like if they're saying, oh yeah, you just go ahead of it, it's like that person can't read your mind. Like, I know you're saying, yeah, I trust you to do it, but in your head you have it that you wanted to do it a certain way. But if you don't communicate that, and if you don't have processes in how you want things done, you actually can't like go back on that person and be like, you did a crappy job, because to them you gave them the go ahead to run with it. So that's where it's like, you processes, like, write down the processes, write down your expectations, write down your brand guidelines and mottos, so you know that the people that you're going to give your trust to actually does what you want.
Yep, exactly. Speaking of doing what you want, I think we're coming to the next part of the discussion, which is basically like the reasons why all this happens. I mean, we have already discussed partially, but I think three things to point out. The first one, in my experience, is when teams are getting different incentives. So say marketing is incentivized for just sheer amount of leads that they bring in. Product is incentivized for the speed of work. I don't know, finance is incentivized for actually cutting down expenses. And then everybody's just pulling in completely different direction, which we partially discussed this at the very beginning, but like, what's your approach to solving this misalignment problem?
Oh, this is a really good question. I think it really depends on the founder when it comes to this, because some founders might be like, might be all about speed. So the incentive for their employees is like, the faster you get this done, the better. Where some founders might be like, oh, I want quality over speed. So it really depends on the founder. Like, there is no one way to do it. But I think, like, definitely, I don't like when people are like, I don't like personally when people are like, you gotta hustle. You gotta just hustle. That's you're in this company to hustle. That's the incentive. Because one, your employees are gonna burn out and end up hating you. So that for me is not a good incentive. Like, I will never work for a company that says you need to hustle. I will work for companies that's like, we have high expectations and we want it done this way. I'll be like, no problem, but don't make me hustle, because I'm not going to do it. I'll do it in my way. I will give you the quality in the product, but not. So yeah, that's kind of my thing. What's your thoughts on that from your experience?
Um, when a certain type of founder, it's usually, let's call them like visionary founder, who just like doesn't care to understand how incentives actually work. They only talk about, and by incentives I mean like emotional incentives.
Mm-hmm.
I like not financial ones, because I feel like a startups is not really a thing.
Yeah.
It's like they don't know how to rally the troops. All they know is how to push the vision down by saying like, we're going to build a unicorn. That's literally a phrase I've heard 1,000 different times. I'm like, yeah, but we have
Same.
a pony, and the pony is
Pony has a
actually
broken leg.
exactly.
Pony is not even walking properly right now.
Exactly, like it's a donkey. Holy shit, it's a donkey. Like
Oh
and
my.
then they fail. So they think that all they have to do is just like be like, here's our deck. We're gonna build a unicorn. Bye. And they absolutely fail to like enable and activate people. And then they
Mhm.
think that everybody needs to just fall in line for some sort of numbers representing KPIs and whatnot. What is the other very popular one? OKRs. Like
Yeah.
there is different ways to skin the cat, but at the end it comes down to the fact that if you're not that person yourself, you gotta at least have that person on your team. Especially, I think it more so concerns the business side of the team versus like the product and engineering.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to activate your sales, marketing, like basically all the business people, you've lost the game, because eventually, like, they're not going to respect you because you either don't care or don't understand what they're doing, and you're just slamming them with numbers all the time. And I've seen a couple of startups implode because of that. And I think it also has to do with our second, like, we're coming to the second point of this whole why this happens. When you first start a company, you have, like, I don't know, say 10 people around you because you managed to raise a pre-seed, or maybe like you bootstrapped it. You have one sort of identity, and it's good because you're, like, fresh off the boat, blah blah blah. But the whole fresh off the boat doesn't work when you're scaling past those 10 people. And if you don't do the work on yourself to, like, scale yourself, you're never going to be able to scale the business.
That identity shift, every single founder needs to go through almost like a whole 180. Because when you're at the beginning and you have only a small team, you're doing a lot of the work yourself.
Exactly.
But when you're kind of moving from doer to designer and the strategy only, and that's, I think, even for
Like
myself,
Tom, the designer, right?
yeah, exactly. So you're moving your identity shift and what's expected of you completely changes, because you're no longer, when you have 10 people versus 30 people, you no longer have to do a lot of the things you had to do when you had a small team. Now you have to be on they're more the strategy, the vision, the design of what you want to do, not actually doing the work. And I think that's a lot of founders struggle with that, because they feel like if they let go, that maybe things will shit will hit the fan. Like they think that if they're not fully involved, that things don't go well. But that's where, like, if you systemize your business, there is no way it can't go well, because now it's just a system that is repeated by anyone. Even if you have someone hired 6 months ago versus tomorrow, everyone still goes through your expectations.
Exactly. And this goes back to the whole yo-yo of, like, I'm just gonna do everything myself because I'm gonna do it better than anyone else.
Yeah.
You know what? I mean, I personally went through this myself, especially when the team
Same.
grows. It's like I had, like, very big trouble letting go.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'll be like, you know what, guys, you do you, blah, blah, blah. But then I would come back to the over-controlling Ollie and be like, show me your sonoboard. Like,
Yeah.
no, blah, blah, blah. And it's hard to find that balance.
It is hard to find, and it's harder when there's no no processes in place. Like if you were to let that delegation go, but give them, like, here is, like, what I expect from you, like, them not following it just means they're a bad hire. But at least you set them up for success to give you the best job possible. And that's where a lot of people go from, like, yeah, let go, like, I don't need to know about it, and then they come back 6 months later and it's like everything's a mess. But it's because you didn't set up that team to follow the exact way you want stuff to get done.
Exactly. So I think this is a very good segue into our hypothesis of the missing role in the startup, because, I mean, everybody hires for the, like,
Yeah.
classic roles, head of growth, CMO, COO, etc. But I feel like what's really needed is, like, literally a doppelganger of the founder who's gonna help him, like, re-architect or rewire the whole operating model about attacking his ego and also, like, crushing the souls of people in the company. Like, what's your take on that?
I feel like a lot of founders, I think, hire people that maybe know the same amount of them, or, like, don't know more than them, because they feel threatened. But if I'm going to hire someone, I want someone to know more than me, because I need them to bring their knowledge to my company. And a lot of founders are like, their ego takes over and they're like, I need to be the smartest person in this company. But if you're dealing with that as your, like, motto, it's like you're the smartest person in the company, your business is not going to grow past, because you, like, the knowledge ends with you. Or if you hire a system architect or a finance CFO that knows things to do better than you do, you're going to have more success. So I think it's just letting that go and being okay with hiring that role that knows more than you.
Absolutely. I think, oh my God, I think it was Steve Jobs who said, don't hire smart people and tell them what to do. Like, this is the fallacy of like every second founder.
Yes.
Like you said, like hiring really good, qualified people, and then at the end of the day, still trying to tell them what to do.
Yeah, and I've seen this firsthand. I've gone as a consultant in the operating how to improve their operations, and they're telling me that they don't want to try it because it didn't work before, and it's like you didn't try it my way, and because I wouldn't be here if it did, because it would
Right.
have worked. And
Hmm.
I've had to have a conversation with some clients, being like, hey, like you brought me in for a reason. If you were debunking everything I'm saying, you wouldn't be in this mess that you're in now, because you would have already done it. You would have already solved the problem. So it's yeah, you definitely have to trust and be okay with people knowing more. You want that, like you actually want that, and you need that in order to actually grow your company to the best way it can be.
But I think there is also like the opposite paradox, as in, say, a CMO, head of growth, is trying to tell the founder, like, we need to do X, Y, and Z. And they would be like saying it for 3 months. And then finally, the founder brings on an external consultant. The consultant says the same thing. And founder is like, oh my God, this is genius. And then, like, you see the CMO just like dying in the corner because they've been saying it for 3 months, but the founder didn't give a
Yeah.
single damn about it.
Oh, that happens so often, and we both experienced it in our roles. Like
Yeah.
that happens when you're in house. Sometimes founders take those people for granted, and almost like if someone else that they bring in as an expert says the same thing, they, even though it's the same thing, it's like, oh, they must be right. Where like they're questioning their own CMO. It's like it's actually
Right.
shouldn't be the case. Your CMO is the person that's on your team. Listen to them. If you don't like what they're saying, then okay, you can replace them with a different CMO. But it's like I think that's such a bad trait to have for the person that's been working with you and being loyal to you, to for you to just like ignore their ideas, but someone else brings in the same idea that's been with the company for 2 hours and you're all over them. Like that's not going to make the person that's on your team feel good.
Right. I think we have already touched upon this quickly, but I just wanted to reiterate, like, when is the good time for the startup to bring in this, let's call them systems architect, even though I don't think that's like a widely used connotation.
I know it's just systems architect, systems up like consultant. I always say before the company grows, because it's always easier to build the foundations and build them properly from like when you're still a baby in the industry. Like put the systems in place before shit hits the fan.
Right.
And it's a lot harder to go back to a company that has all these mistakes now. Customers are unhappy, their team is unhappy, all of this stuff to happen, and then they bring in someone to fix it. But it's like, why not avoid that in the first place? Why not set up the systems to like not have any problems, not have customers complaining, not have your team members hate you? I would say as soon as possible, as soon as you can see growth in your horizon, you should really be prepared for that on the back end.
Yeah, to echo your point, I've definitely it happened to me a couple of times that like finally the extra person that was needed would finally be brought in, like an external consultant, whatever. But I would be already like burned. Like I was so
Mm-hmm.
burned at that point that I was like, it doesn't matter what the person's going to do. I'm gone. I just like I don't have trust in the leadership anymore. I don't believe that things are actually going to change, because usually that person is brought in as like strategic consultant, as in like they're going to tell you what to do and then it's still up to you to actually
Mm.
implement it or make it happen. So at that point I'll be like, fine, like you can say all the right things, but I just don't think it's actually going to happen.
Yeah, because you've lost that trust now, because
Mhm.
they left it too late, to the extent that it's like whatever they say, oh, and fix it. And like this is like I love doing this when I go into companies. Like when I audit the company, some other consultants are just going to talk to the founders and the C-suite level. I talk to every single person. It's rare I don't talk to like even like the very very bottom line. Like I'll have a group meeting with them, but I'm going to hear their feedback. Like tell me what's not working for you. And when
Right.
people, when all team members feel heard, they're going to be brought in and they're going to believe that there's changes coming. But if a
Exactly.
CEO is like, "Oh, there's changes coming. I can't wait for you to see it," but it's like they're not part of it. They'll just be like, they'll feel how you felt. Like it's too late. You haven't done it up until now. I don't trust that. But if you were to be involved from the beginning of that process, you would be more excited that actual changes are coming.
Exactly. Exactly. How are we on time? Okay, I think we have a few minutes to take questions. I actually see three of them. Martha, how do I know if my senior hire is failing versus the system failing them? Wow, okay, this is a very good question. Do you want to take it?
That's a really good question. And you know what? Kudos to ask that, because a lot of founders will just blame the person without actually
It's
questioning.
probably like a CMO.
Yeah, it's no, that's a really good question, because like, yeah, when I go to companies, they're like, this person is doing bad work, this person's doing bad work. But then I ask them, well, have you set them up for success?
Right.
Because that's a huge part, and that comes on you as like the leader. I would say it would be good to internally audit the systems that they have, and uh, in terms of knowing if they're set up for success, ask them what support do you need. Find the gaps. Like if someone's doing bad work, it could be because they're lazy, it could be because they're just bad at what they do, but it also could be because they're not getting answers from another team for forever, and that's making them delayed. Maybe there's the communication is a mess, so that's making them not be on top of it. So I would first of all ask them, like, what is happening that you may need support with. So you're not questioning. It's like, why are you doing bad work? You're coming from like a, how can I support make your life better. And that you'll know if they come and say that it's a lot of like other people or lack of systems, then that's when you'll know that the systems need improvement instead of like the actual person. I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes absolute sense. I mean, it's so, I think your answer was so good that I practically have nothing to add. It's basically when I was a manager of a team, I would usually, like, I would ask myself the question, like, if somebody was performing poorly, I would ask myself, have I given them everything that they needed to be successful? Like, if I have not enabled them, or maybe I have not shared enough info, it's basically like, have I done good as a manager? And then if I can objectively say that, yes, I've done everything and I haven't done the yo-yo, which probably sabotage them, and they're still performing poorly, then the problem is probably with the other person. But it
Yeah,
requires a very high amount of like self-awareness to do this process.
100%. Yeah, because you're questioning your ability as a leader, and that takes a lot of courage, and that's good. I think that's what makes a good leader, is looking
Exactly.
internal first before they bite.
Exactly. I see another really good question. Andrew, how does this role differ from a revenue operations or a CRO, like chief revenue officer?
As in, like, how does the like an operating officer?
Yeah, basically, how does the system architect or system designer differ from, I guess, somebody wholly responsible for the revenue?
I mean, they're quite different in my opinion, because the operation side is like, how does the company operate? When we're talking about like chief revenue, we're talking about how to bring in more money. That's to me, that's two separate things. Obviously, there is a mix there, because it's like, if the operations on the back end is a shit show, that's going to affect the revenue that's coming in. So there's definitely a mixture. But in terms of the two roles, they're quite different, because the revenue officer is now going to look, is the team set up for success? Is the communication good? Are we onboarding our team members correctly? Like, that's not their job, essentially, to look after.
Yeah, I would say from my perspective, it's also like the person responsible for the financial stuff is probably not going to take a look at how like how internal communications are set up, like how everything is being tracked, etc., etc. So that's why, I mean, it just really, it sucks to say that most of the startups don't realize there is this role, because they're just hiring vertically for the, like, I guess, classic roles, and they
Mhm.
don't think that It's like, that's why I'm comparing it to like literally the right hand of the doppelganger of the CEO, because practically it is the job of the CEO, but the problem is they just don't have the bandwidth to do it. And for me, it's usually like, I don't see it as a full-time role. For me, it's more like you come in, fix their shit, and off you go. And they'll probably come back to you a year later if they're scaling, and then they hit another like stage of growth, and then they need to do it all over again. So I think there is like lack of awareness for sure, and most of the startups might see it as like a nice have, not as a must have.
Yeah, where to me it's like if there's a must. If the companies that are operationally doing good, everything is going to go down. Your teams are not going to be happy. Your customers aren't going to be happy. It's going to be harder for you to make money. Everything is, because it's like, it's how we operate. If we don't operate effectively, everything essentially is going to backfire.
Exactly. All right, I think we have time left for one more question. How do I decentralize decisions without losing control? Oh, yeah, that's your.
Well, first of all, I think documentation is a huge one. It's like, is the processes, without even knowing how something, like, say for example, how to conduct a sales call. If you don't have that documented in your way, it's going to be very hard for someone to make a decision that like it'll be very hard for them to put themselves in your shoes and be like, what would Olga do? Because there's no document for them to be like, this is how it should be done. And at the end of every process, you can say, it's like, if this person is going this way, this is what you should do, and this way, this is what you should do. So decision, really, like, someone can't make a decision for you if, first of all, they don't have the clarity on what you base your own decision on. So that would probably be, it's like, start documenting, and keep up with it too. Don't just write an SOP and then put it in a Google Drive and forget about it for 2 years. Which I've seen happen. I've worked with a company recently that's been 10 years in work, and they've updated their SOP last time like 6 years ago. Obviously, everything's changed. With technology, everything's changed, but no one would know that except the 4 team members that were like in it. But if they hire someone, they'd be lost, because it'd be like, okay, how do you do things?
Exactly. And like, from my perspective, I would just add one more thing, because you already touched upon the most important aspect, documentation. It's like, when you're starting or trying to start the delegation process, I think it just needs to be, there has to be like 200% of clarity, as in like, okay, this is what I expect from you. Yeah. This is how we're going to measure this. This is the timeline. So there are like multiple aspects that need to be defined for each, let's call like strategic decision, or something that you let the other person run with. And if you don't have that established, chances are one of you is going to be really upset at the end of the day, because if there is misalignment from the very beginning, then the person's going to assume that they're going to do X, Y, and Z. You have something else in mind, and then it's going to eventually clash.
Exactly. We can't think that other people read our minds, because they can't, unless they're like, have special skills. They can't. And you can't get mad at a team member for not like doing what they're supposed to if you've never told them what they're supposed to do.
Exactly.
Or if you don't have a document that tells you, okay, this is my expectations.
Exactly. All right. Do you have any closing remarks? Because we're on time.
No, I really enjoyed this conversation. I think we touched on so many different aspects of this. But I guess the closing statements is, in short, track your finances. Don't spend stupidly. Don't quickly hire slow but fire fast. I think that's going to save you a lot of money and stress and mental stability. What was the other thing that was, and hire for the correct roles, I think.
Yeah. And build trust both ways. Like,
exactly.
Like, be able to trust your team, but also make sure they trust you, because without trust and transparency, things are eventually going to go wrong.
Exactly. And lead by example. That probably is the same.
Yeah.
Like, you can't say something but then do the complete opposite. People are not going to follow you as a leader or trust you in that regards.
Exactly. All right. That was a cool live.
That was really good. I really enjoyed that. I hope everyone got good nuggets from that.
Yeah, guys, if you have any follow-up questions, obviously you can feel free to message either of us or both of us, because we're available. This was supposed to be streaming on Instagram too. Well, I don't know if that worked, to be completely honest. But we're reachable on both Instagram and LinkedIn. It's just like you can find us very easily. And well, see you next time.
Thank you.